Hey y'all, Chris Clark here, publisher of PalmettoPreps.com. Welcome into Palmetto Preps, the podcast, and today we have a special guest. I'm going to be joined for a conversation by Lisa Huntley. She is the mother of Alex Boogie Huntley, the defensive tackle from Hammond School in Columbia, who is committed to play college football at the University of South Carolina beginning next summer. Lisa, as the parent of a highly recruited high school football player, has seen a lot in terms of good experiences in recruiting, but she's also seen some negative things in recruiting. She's had the experiences in terms of talking to other parents and just from personal experience that has led her to do some seminars on just what to do and what not to do during the recruiting process. She has some helpful advice and tips for parents who are maybe frustrated with the recruiting process or just flat out unsure. So hopefully this episode will be a resource for parents, prospects, coaches, and hopefully it'll be entertaining for you guys. So now let's get to our conversation with Lisa Huntley. Lisa, thanks a lot for taking the time to join us today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to have you on the show today to give your perspective as a parent on the recruiting process. I know that you've given some talks, some seminars in the past. I think one was last night. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, yeah, it sure was.
Yeah. Had one last night, and just helping parents navigate the recruiting process, giving advice, sort of the do's and don'ts. And so we'll get to that in just a minute. But first of all, I just want to get your generalized view on the recruiting process and some background. You've had Alex go through the recruiting process. You've had another family member go through the recruiting process too.
My
is that right?
My oldest son played college lacrosse. So, and it's just different for each sport.
How does football differ from lacrosse? I can say as a media member, I'm pretty confident that there's not a lot of media coverage of lacrosse recruiting. So I know that's a major difference, but what are some of the differences in just sport to sport in your talks with other parents or your experiences?
Sure. I know for lacrosse, we're from Maryland, so both of my boys were playing lacrosse at a young age up there, and we moved here at a pivotal time in my oldest son's career. He was good 11th grade, so at that point when we had moved here, he'd started to get some interest in Maryland, where there's a lot more recruiting assistance for lacrosse in Maryland. I'll say that for sure. Coming down here, he attended Blythewood High School, had a great coach who actually played lacrosse in Maryland. But in this area, we're really not in a hotbed yet. I think the sport is really growing, but there's just not a lot of support down here. And like you said, there's not a lot of press coverage. I think for lacrosse, you're relying more on your travel team coaches to help you with the recruiting process. Camps are much bigger, whereas I think in football, our head football coach and each kid's head football coach plays such a large role in this process.
Yeah, so on the football recruiting front, the process starts really early. I mean, we know that nowadays it's started earlier and earlier with offers, attention, media coverage. I think really is one thing that drives that. But when was the first, I guess, notion that you had that, hey, Alex is probably getting recruited? And when did it start to sort of heat up to where you saw, this is going to be a little bit different?
When we were in Maryland, some recruiters for DeMatha High School came out to one of his games and pretty much told us, yeah, we want him here at DeMatha. And at that point, he was in 6th grade. So we started to get an idea, okay, he might be okay, because DeMatha is a pretty well-known school for putting out, good football players. They have a really good program there. And then we moved here. And I think in 9th grade, even when Boogie was shadowing at Hammond, the coaches were like, we can use you. We were sure of it. And then in 9th grade, we met Coach Muschamp, and, he picked up his offer after a lacrosse game. So.
Yeah. So in terms of good experiences with the recruiting process, as you guys took a lot of visits, whether it was in-state, out-of-state, what were the positives on the process? Was it just meeting the people, hearing from the coaches?
I think for me, and I know Boogie would be so embarrassed, but for me, it was more so meeting the actual players at the schools. I remember approaching guys at Bama and Boogie going, "Please, mom, stop. Just don't do it." And I was just asking them, what do you wish you knew before you got, like when you got here, what do you wish you knew coming into this? And I asked players that at Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Boogie was mortified, but I wanted to know so that way maybe I can better help Boogie be prepared for some of this. I know there's nothing I can really do like to help him be ready for that first day when he's on that field, but if I can kind of have an idea of what they wish they knew, I can, help better steer Boogie and some of his friends in that direction.
What were some of the answers that you got from players as far as, what they wish they knew going in?
There were pretty much, and we discussed this last night, three main topics that just themes that kept recurring at all these different schools. One was the time management. There's a whole bunch of activities that you have to partake in when you're playing college football, but there's also what the NCAA calls unaccountable activities, such as, you've got to go to recovery with trainers, there's dietitian meetings, there's compliance meetings, there's all these other things. So time management was a big one. Another one was, I remember actually at University of South Carolina, one of the players, and he's a sophomore now, but he had said to me, I wish I knew how better to my sleep, like how to be able to cut off and disconnect from electronics or phones or media, whatever it be, when you got to get up at 5 a.m. for a run, and being able to shut down at that time. And then the last, which Boogie thinks was the biggest, was conditioning. There were guys there that said at several schools that said, yeah, you think you're in shape, but when you get to college, you're not in shape. So that was a big one. I can't help Boogie with the conditioning, but the other two I can probably help him with.
Right. So anything about the recruiting process that was to you a negative, or I'll say or anything that you feel like, hey, maybe the NCAA needs to look at changing this, whether it's a rule in terms of the timing of recruiting or anything else? I mean, were there any negative experiences or things that you say, we could really do this better from a player, coach, parent standpoint?
Yeah, I think that there were a few schools that were bad-mouthing other schools and other coaches to us, and that to me was an instant turnoff. You don't need to put another school down to live.
Hey guys, Chris Clark here for Anchor. Interested in making a podcast? Anchor is the easiest way to do it. I can tell you from experience. They give you everything you need in one place for free. You can use it right from your phone with their app or your desktop computer. Their creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast in just minutes, so it sounds great. Not only that, they'll also distribute your podcast for you for free, so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership through their support program or through ad reads. So if you want to get started in podcasting today, download the Anchor app on your mobile device or go to anchor.fm to get started. Walk us through, something that the average person will never get to do in full is go and take a visit to a college, whether obviously official visits are a little bit different because the schools can pay for things and such.
Yeah.
But even just an unofficial visit, sort of walk us through what happens from the time that you get on campus until, the time you leave. I mean, every school does it differently, but what's the general sense of sort of what you get to do?
Well, I think that depends on how badly the school wants the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
When we arrive, I feel like a lot of these schools, they have this stuff down to a science. When we pull in to like park somewhere, there's usually a guy or a girl there on a microphone signaling to somebody, okay, and if they don't know who you are by face, they ask you your name and they're signaling, okay, this person's arrived. I think one of the biggest announcements we had at an unofficial visit was Oklahoma. When we got there was a live DJ and he was like music playing. They were screaming Boogie's name and we were just, wow, this is insane. There was a DJ and, that was huge. But then we usually, our position coaches there to meet us. And we go take a tour of the school. If it's our first time at a school, you'll do an academic tour as well, and you'll meet with the academic department and maybe take a quick dorm tour and meet with the head coach. I know for us, it was really important to get Boogie out to the schools he was very serious about before official visit time, because I think official visits, you're treated so very differently than you are, in an unofficial capacity. So we wanted him to see it more downplayed so he could make an honest decision for himself.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The only official visit that Boogie took was to South Carolina after he
Yep.
committed. Is that right? Okay.
That's absolutely right.
So,
And I will say, South Carolina treated him on his official visit as good as they did on the unofficials. They were just amazing. So they treated him the same way throughout this whole process. They always made him feel like he was a priority. They made us feel like he was a priority. They always went above and beyond. So
did you have an opportunity to interact with other parents of other prospects, whether it was on campus at places or just, keeping communication over text or phone with any of them to sort of lean on each other throughout the process?
yeah, I've been in touch with some other prospect parents, and we've discussed the process.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody's process is very different. Like, we met a prospect who they were saying, because the parents were saying to me and my husband, why did you commit so early? Why did you commit so early? We are waiting, and, everybody's different. Some parents and kids have a steadfast date to commemorate something special, but throughout the process, I relied a lot on our head coach and all the coaches at Hammond, the strength trainers, and people like that for this part of it. Because, as I said, lacrosse is different from football. So without Coach Kimmery, he was a huge source for me.
So one thing that I wanted to get to that I mentioned earlier was these sort of seminars that you've been a part of for other parents.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, what do these entail? Sort of what I know you had one last night. We're recording this on a Wednesday, so Tuesday night you did a seminar here in Columbia. What are they all about?
Okay, so basically, there are a lot of recruiting services out here that are charging parents thousands of dollars to get information that's pretty much free, or navigate. It's kind of to help parents navigate this process. There's so much information out there, and unfortunately, I learned a lot of hard lessons with my oldest son because I didn't have anybody to lean on. I didn't have anybody to ask these questions of. I didn't feel empowered to ask the right questions of coaches or counselors at the school or strength training. I just had no idea what I was doing, and I got. So I'm hearing these stories of these other parents who are so stressed out and so desperate because they know how hard their kids are working and they just want their kids to be seen, that they resort to locking into these contracts for thousands of dollars for these companies that are swearing to your kid's going to get exposure. And that's just not always true.
What kind of things are these companies, you don't have to name names, of course, but what are they promising as far as exposure? Because, me as a media person, I mean, certainly I know that there are kids that fly under the radar. There are kids that get under recruited, underexposed. But what exactly are they promising or saying that they can do that, a parent, a coach, a media member cannot help them with?
They will put together highlight reels for your kid. Well, I'm here to say your college football coaches, coordinators, position coaches, they'll help you put together a huddle, a huddle highlight reel for free. Whereas these people are charging, $500. And then they say, well, we have this open database where coaches can come and search and they can see you. Well, again, your head high school coach is your best ally. If he's out there, promoting you as best as he can at the level that he thinks your child is eligible to play in, your head coach is going to give you the same things for free. So they're promising the exposure, which I don't agree with. I think at this point, a lot of people know these things are rackets. The only people that don't know are the parents that are just coming into this process.
So are you going to have any more of these seminars in the future for people that maybe would like to go and see one?
I'm not sure yet. I haven't decided. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty much open with, hey, if you have a question and you're unsure, I'm happy to help, so some people, they have it under control, but I just haven't decided yet. A lot of my friends or friends of friends have just texted me questions. And if I think I can help, I'm happy to do it. I think there's a need for parents that have been through this process to help other parents through it as well.
So obviously you guys were, from a football perspective, not lacking in terms of exposure, and Boogie obviously had a lot of people around him helping him too. And he's an
Yeah.
excellent player. So he got a lot of exposure, and a lot of offers. But, if there is a parent out there that maybe feels like, things are unfair, they're not getting exposure, what would be maybe one or two tips that you would give them instead of locking into a recruiting exposure service contract? What would be the top, maybe one or two things pieces of advice you would give them?
I think as parents, we try to control the narrative of our kids' exposure and how we want them to come across, and how we've raised them to be these great people. I think a huge thing is social media. Some of these kids, that's my big thing. These kids do not realize that even if they like content that isn't in line with the character traits that maybe you were raised with or that a head coach wants to see, you are forever linked to that content. So I'm always pushing social media with Boogie and all of his friends. I have no problem going to any one of those guys on his team saying, you need to take that down now. This isn't good. Or social media, like even I read recently that a head coach passed on a kid because he just he found the kid's Twitter handle to be offensive. And I worked for a major communications company for over 20 years. And even at that company, they asked for social media passwords. So I'm just trying to drive home to these kids and parents now, you have got to get a good handle on this stuff now, so that way in 10 years down the road, when they go to get a job and their company asks for their passwords, what are they going to see or what are they going to be linked to? We see it now on TV with judges and all kinds of other stars that, they had something on social media when they were in 6th grade and they've now lost their job because of it. So I'm really big on staying on top of that.
Okay. So two other things that your seminar covers that I wanted to hit on before I let you go are camp attendance, because this is something that, I think about a lot. I get questions from parents about it. Which camps are worth it to attend, which are not. So your thoughts on camp attendance, and then personal trainers as well, outside personal training.
I say for camp attendance, you need to be very wary of the camps that are charging exorbitant amounts of money for 1 or 2 days. We've always said to Boogie from day one, when you're at when you're younger and you go to some of these more expensive camps, you're not getting the best of the best. You're getting the best of the parent, for the parents that could afford that camp. Good camps know that not everybody has money to attend, and a good camp wants the best players they can get. So you're seeing fees of like $25, like Rivals, completely reputable, Nike, Under Armour. By 11th grade, Boogie wasn't attending a camp unless it was free. There are only 2 camps that I feel for myself as a parent, having been through with Alex, that we endorse. And number one is FBU. Of course, I like to see parents going to camps that have a pathway to maybe a bigger all-star game that, their child might want to play in. Boogie was going to FBU camps when he was in 5th grade. They're position specific. He always walked away with what he says is another tool in his toolbox. And he was on that FBU trail from camp to Top Gun, and now he's realizing his dream of being able to play in the All-American game on NBC in January. But there was a specific path. USA football, Boogie was on the USA national team. He really wanted to play against Canada and Japan. That was his big thing. I want to represent the United States. We had to take a path to get that. We had to go to a regional camp and then the Hall of Fame. And so I like to see those because there's a payoff there for, some of the kids. And I like that. And as far as position, like the trainers, I think for Alex, any outside training we've done before a high school level was more for like strength and conditioning and, mobility and things like that. We weren't taking off a season of an off-season sport, ever. Like I know a lot of parents that have like maybe dropped basketball so they could focus more on baseball. And I just don't think college coaches want that anymore. I was asked by almost every coach at every school, how many sports does your son play? So you can't let that outside training overtake outside sports. And I think once they get to the high school level, for us at our school at Hammond, the staff that's in place there, I don't have to pay for any outside training whatsoever, from strength and conditioning. I mean, we have a strength coach that's just changed everything for us, and the trainer, Sonia, for rehab or whatever, everything's in place. We don't pay for anything extra now at all. We are good communication with our coaches, and they've really helped us a lot.
Thanks to everyone for listening to Palmetto Preps, the podcast. Hope you enjoyed the insights from Lisa Huntley, the mother of Alex Boogie Huntley, Hammond School defensive tackle, who will be playing college football beginning next summer at the University of South Carolina. Stay tuned for future episodes of Palmetto Preps, the podcast, and be sure to visit us at PalmettoPreps.com.